Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to your Beading Basics video. So I have gotten many requests from beginners on how to choose your beads and what is the difference between beads. The biggest question I get is, what's the difference between a Miyuki and a Toho? And why can't I use them, mix them up and use them together? Why is it when I make a project and I use Toho, it doesn't come out to the same size as something that I would use Miyuki for? So we're going to address these questions in a series of videos, which I'm going to add to the, I try to post weekly, so I'm going to add a little beading basics. Beading for newbies, which everybody has been. We all have been there. I still consider myself a newbie. I'm always learning. Learning is it's something we're always doing, and once we stop learning, that's it. So I'll make a series of these videos, and they're going to be shorter, and I just want to give, these have been requested, and I want to give all you new beaders who are sort of intimidated by these things, just to show you how easy it is to pick out the beads and the differences between them. Okay, so we'll start with Miyuki and Toho. Those are the two biggest or most often used beads in a project. So here are some samples that I made of some peyote, and I've done them in different size pieces, and these are Toho and these are Miyuki, and I've started with a 15-0, which is here and here. So these are generally the sizes that you'll use as you progress in your beading. And here's an 11-0, it's this one, an 8-0, and here's a 6-0. Here's Toho, that's a 15-0. In Toho we have an 11-0, Toho we have an 8-0. I don't have the 6-0, but these are not interchangeable beads. If a project calls for Miyuki and you use Toho, you're going to have to adjust the size a little bit, because the sizes of even though they're both 15-0s, a different company makes each one. They're Japanese seed beads, and a different company makes each one, so they're going to be a little bit different. Now the Toho, here are the 11-0s in both, and I'm going to put the Toho and the Miyuki together just to show you a visual. Okay, so do you see how the Toho is a little bit of a taller bead? Okay, and you're not going to, if you're making a project, you do not want to mix these beads together. Use all of one or all of the other, and if possible, use the one that's suggested in the materials list. Now Toho and Miyuki are both very good beads. I am a Miyuki fan only because I've been using Miyuki for so long. Toho is a little bit of a different shape. It has a little more of a cylinder look to it. It's where Miyuki is really round, and you can see that, and Toho has big holes. So you can see again the difference in between. This is the same 8-0 seed bead. One's Miyuki and one's Toho, and again there's a little bit of a difference in size. So if you're wondering why your Toho beads aren't working in a project that calls for Miyuki seed beads, then that's why. And so you really want to kind of stick to it unless you're experienced enough to make it work. And you can make it work as far as using a Toho when a pattern calls for Miyuki, or Miyuki when a pattern calls for Toho. But you just need to understand a little bit about the beads before you start substituting. Never mix them together. Okay, so we've got, again, 15-0. Let's just recap on these. 11-0, got an 8-0, and a 6-0. And if you notice that the larger the bead, the smaller the number. Okay, and then again with Toho, it's the same 15-0, 11-0, 8-0, 6-0. It's the same. They're called the same. They're the same number, but there is a difference between the two beads. Now, as far as when you're using them, and you're using them in a project that calls for beads to sit very closely together, and it's very important there are no spaces. You want to make sure that you pick out all the really good beads, and you put the ones that aren't so even or so straight aside, and that's called culling. So with Miyuki and Toho, there's not all that much culling. I do cull a bit with cull out some beads with Miyuki and Toho, but not as much as not that much. So they're pretty good for their evenness. They're sort of known for their evenness, but you're still going to be picking out or culling the beads to get the perfect or as nothing is 100% the same size. So you want to get them as close as possible. So so you're going to be picking through your beads a little bit. I do that all the time as I'm beading. That's why I put out piles of beads when I bead, and I just if one's skinny, I just throw it aside, or not throw it aside. I put it in in its own package, because all those uneven beads look great in projects that are very organic and uneven, where you want beads to look uneven. There are times when you don't want them all sitting in row like soldiers. Okay, so there's the difference between Miyuki and Toho, okay? Never mix them together, and try to stick with, and if the pattern says Miyuki, try to stick with Miyuki. If it says Toho, use Toho. That's pretty much the difference between the two of those. All right. So then we've got some Japanese seed beads that are sort of they're just sort of generic seed beads. They don't have a name attached to them. Now, this might be Matsuno. I don't know. I purchased them online at a very reputable site that I buy a lot from, but it only says Japanese seed beads, and I couldn't find anywhere on the site where it said what company they're made from. Now, they sell Toho, but if it's Toho, it's going to say it. If it's Miyuki, it's going to say it. Now, these are sort of the generic seed bead, and this is, and I'll just give you a look at the difference. So if you just look, and I'm going to pull in on for this one, okay? So if you look at these two beads, these are both a size 8, and these are the sort of, generic, no names Japanese seed beads, and you're going to find a lot of this. So it's not that they're not good beads, but you're going to find a lot of narrow ones, fat ones, skinny ones. You're going to find some beads that are have like funky endings and little edges sticking up. Some are going to be more flat looking. I mean, it's so a lot of culling goes on here. And these are the 11Os, and these are also just sort of the generic Japanese seed bead. And it could be Matsuno. I can't really. As I said, I couldn't find on the website what brand they are, but I'm going to pull in for these 11Os. I use these a lot for things like this ring, let's say. So I have some 11O seed beads here, and if you just need a couple of rows, and let me try, let's look at this ring, because this, see these purple beads? These are all the generic sort of Japanese seed beads, and they're you just have to pick through them a little bit more. That's all. It's not that you're really wasting anything. You're always, especially if you're only doing a couple of rows of them, you really, it's very easy to pick through them. So I say, use all seed beads. You don't have to stick to one, and you'll just choose, depending on your project, what the best seed bead is to use for that project. Now, as I said, culling, you're going to do a lot of picking through these, but always save what you pick through, and keep it for a project that requires something, super organic, that's going to be, bumpy, and you want it to look bumpy, and you want spaces, and, that's something that so you'll never waste a bead, is what I'm trying to say. All right, you'll just be picking through them a little bit more. Now here's a Czech seed bead, and this is a 6O. And this, if you live in the States, and I live in the States, and I live in the Northeast, so I know where to find these. We have our craft stores, and they are Michael's, AC Moore, Joanne Fabrics. They have they have mostly Czech seed beads. They are starting to carry Toho seed beads, which was really kind of exciting to me, because they've never carried them before. So this is something pretty new. And they're starting to carry super duos, but we'll get to those. Not in this video, but we'll get to those. So check out your local craft store. You don't always have to order online. The Czech seed beads are not as even. So if I pick up a few of these, you know, it's hard to tell. And I'll pull in one more time for these. So if if you look at them, there's a skinny one in the middle, and there's sort of a flat one there, and that one looks a little bigger. So these are going to be, you can do a lot of culling with these as well, unless you use them for the more organic projects where you don't have to worry about that. This is the 6/0 in the Miyuki, and it's, they're beautifully even. You're not going to do much culling. They have incredible colors. That's another thing, you have incredible colors with Miyuki and Toho. I mean, the Czech, there are a lot of those too. So, you're going to have a use for everything that you buy. There's never, you never waste your money on beads. You're always going to use a bead. I have beads that are years old that I still, that I'll look and I'll say, oh my gosh, I bought that, 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought I'd never use it. And all of a sudden there's a use for it. I'm telling you, that happens all the time. Okay, so we've got our Miyuki, we've got our Toho, we've got our Czech seed beads, we've got sort of the generic Japanese seed bead, and then we have Delica beads. Now, Miyuki makes a bead called a Delica bead, and a Delica bead is a cylinder bead. Now, Toho makes cylinder beads too, and so there are, I think they're called treasures. I use specifically Miyuki Delica beads, just because that's what I started with. But that doesn't mean that the Toho brand is, one's better than the other. So, there are a few brands of the cylinder beads, so you can look, just look up cylinder beads and each, there's so many websites that have them, and you'll be able to find, you'll be able to find them all over. I'm just, Delicas are just sort of the standard for me. I love them. If you notice, now I'm going to pull in on this one. Hold on a second. Okay. There you go. So here, do you see how the difference between that bead, and let me pop a couple of round seed beads on here. There you go. These are not the same size beads, but I just want you to see the difference between a Delica, which is this sort of cylinder. It's almost like, think of a straw and then cutting it into beads. That's exactly what they are. They have big holes, and they're not they're not sort of like, bulgy around. Do you love my technical terms? So you see the difference there? That's your regular seed bead. And see the Delica? There's a it's a specific bead made for a specific type of of project. So you would not you wouldn't interchange them. A Delica is a totally different bead, and a Delica bead is just great for brick stitch, for peyote. Look at what a beautiful piece it makes. It's just gorgeous. And these come also in, here's a piece that's in a 15-0. Here's an 11-0. This is a 10-0. I love 10-0 Delicas. That's something that, I'm going to pull out a teeny bit. That's something that I've been using a lot of lately, and they're great. I love them. I think they look really pretty. The 11-0s are probably what most people use. So see the difference in size between a 10-0 and an 11-0, and then here's the 15-0. All right. So there are a lot of projects that you will use the Delica beads for. So this is another bead that you will probably be using, even as a beginner, because it's just a great bead. We use it, for things like for endings on bracelets. And if you look at this bracelet, this entire bracelet is made with seed beads. So it's these Delicas at the beginning, and then they just go up, from 15-0s, 11-0s to 8-0s to 6-0s. So you can really make some really cool stuff, and really cool projects, and you don't even have to buy a crystal. You can just use seed beads. So, keep that in mind. And here's my little mess that I made. Keep that in mind, that you can really make a lot of projects with with 6/0 seed beads. Here's another one that we made. This was like, I think, my first video. And well, of course on this I have some O beads and some crystals, but there, you know, you can do a lot with this, the 6/0 seed beads. And even, you know, you can put them with crystals, which is pretty awesome, you know, that you can do that. One other thing, just of note, as far as seed beads, if you'll notice, look at how the jump in size from a 15/0 to 11/0 to an 8/0 to a 6/0. They're really, you know, there's a real difference in the sizes. Like, it's, you wouldn't look at it and say, oh gosh, I can't tell whether that's a 15/0 or an 11/0. It's very obvious. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. One interesting thing about seed beads. And with the Czech seed beads, I don't have a 10/0 out here, but the 10/0s make great organic pieces where you can, you know, string lots and lots of beads, and, you know, have it, you know, all uneven and all, you know, sort of bumpy, and you know, that's another, you know, another way of using them. So as I said, nothing that you buy will ever go to waste, because there is always a use for seed beads. So never throw anything out, even your beads that you'd cull. You know, don't throw them out, keep them, and you'll find a use for everything. All right, so that's a quickie. That's just sort of a basic Toho, Miyuki, Delica, you know, generic Japanese seed bead, Czech seed bead, just a little info about those beads. And I hope it was helpful to you. I'm going to try and make this a regular little series to add to my other, to the other tutorials. I'll always have a weekly tutorial, hopefully weekly. I try to keep them weekly. Sometimes I even get 2 in a week. But this is going to be a little addition. So this one was a little long, but for the most part, we're going to keep them, you know, we're going to keep them short. We're going to, you know, do a little how to thread a needle, you know, what thread to buy, how to set up your bead space and all that. So we have a bunch of little how-tos coming up for Beading Basics, and I think it'll be great for you, you beginners. All right, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.